Chapter 6. Moore parked in an alley off Fillmore Street. He pulled out the purse, fingering the design on the flap. In the center was a stiff circle. The tip of his pocket knife sliced into the soft leather, dislodging a plastic disc the size of a quarter that generated its own heat as he turned it in his hand. That heat seemed to permeate his nervous system, exciting his spine with a shiver. Information as some sort of electromagnetic cerebral code entered his psyche, an agent slipping through the screen of his thoughts into the back of his mind. Realizing that meant he possessed a thing worth killing to acquire. Or did it now possess him? He slipped the disc into his boot and drove to Corner's house. The Lincoln sat in the driveway as he pulled it in behind. 2 hours had passed since they had parted company, and the lights of the city were on. He approached the front door as a disembodied voice spoke. Crazy notions of disembodied minds swirled into his, as often happened when he ingested psychedelics. Then, as now, in the bewitchment of the seven sisters of the St. Francis, he found him a being there, a confluence of pirates, plunderers, demons, whores, and lovers, out in an eye, all in her eye, Kalimaz screaming as she now tore through the cosmos, a being of it in her eyes, sizzling everybody now, obliterating everybody, every land, every globe and globular cluster of her mirror sees potential mirror LE, appearing of it now a while, sweeping all galactic light black into her eyes, zapping everybody, eviscerating every thin king of it in formaz, within her eyes, a seen scythe of now, knowing out in formaz any first time. He saw in her eyes, zinging a whirl of steel blade and flesh, as words slicing the indivisible, turning invisibility of it into a worlding denial of it. A world now merely mirrored potential, a crazy, cunning, uncanny deceit of mind of any appearance of it as thoughts in formaz, mirror duplication of one invisibility now, a supersonic idea in formation of anybody out in her eyes, a psi-whole power, a power infinite as potential, in her eyes, unconsciousness of ease, everybody, her eyes as a supernatural consciousness, now to be as thoughts radiating Sheena, her every wave function, mirroring any of us now, no knowing it out in a while, a space in time in her eyes, every eyes, as raining that raining, a why being seen as with unstoppable intent, one pressing urgency in toward merely appearing of it as twisting information appearing to be anybody or any meager thinking of it. A pervasive blackness, black around, microwave energy, seducing to ignore out of it, no knowing anybody or thing in a while, that wily of a while of any potential body of a being still changeless. A being in the first place now, still as thoughts out and about, knowing form as a searing, seething second or two, searching, electromagnetic black fire, burning, ask gnawing away as a need, a feeling of a being alone now, seeking a turning, knowing out of it someone, something other, someone somehow missing, out there waiting in the darkness, feeling the compression of her weight, of waiting for her eyes, eye on him, horizon, any form seen in her eyes, the gravity of a being seen in her eyes, the weight of waiting for her eyes, eye on death. He slipped off his jacket and shirt, feeling the gripping chill of dusky fog sobering his mind, till Corner broke his reverie, shouting from above as he leaned over the railing of his third-story deck. Seen this shit go down before. Dark in the dark. Darkness lost in the darkness of his mind. Or why, you never know what crazy dance going on, he howled in gales of laughter. Hell yes, that evil shit done most times in the broad light of day, so don't be slandering the sacred darkness of the Black Christ, depraved white man, Moore poured back. He could feel that preacher fire climbing up from somewhere down below as he slipped his shirt and jacket back on. As he approached the front door, a heavy key bounced off his shoulder. I'm a-being on the roof, you know the way. The old-fashioned iron key hitting his clavicle left a sting as he clicked it in the lock. He adjusted the disc in his booth with one hand, pushing the door open with the other. He took the stairs 2 at a time until he reached the top floor. Corner stood on the deck off the bedroom, holding out a cell phone. He'd exchanged the full-length leather coat for a black leather vest over a white cotton western shirt with high starch collar and snap buttons glinting with mother of pearl. Moore detected the faint odor of gun oil as he approached. It's your friend, your girlfriend, the professor. Christina? Moore asked, his boot heels clicking on hardwood as he strode across the room. I am very surprised by this call, Mr. Darkmoor. Her voice raised his heart rate. Few people have the number. He caught his breath as he turned his back on Corner's sly smile. Corner digs into people's lives like a depraved miner. Something to do with the company he keeps, he replied. He's close to certain influences that unfortunately connect you to me. How can I trust your motives are honest when he pulls such long strings, she asked. He thought he detected a slight tone of longing or ocean rolling in the background. I want to love you, but I don't know if the world will let me. That's from an old Bogart movie. How's the eye? She said with a laugh. A little blue around the edges, but nothing I didn't deserve. I need to see you. Something is going on. I tried to paint your portrait last night and torched my digs. Sounds like a corner plot. More like a cosmic angle. Let's talk face to face. We can see what's real and what's not. Come to my house, 44 Olympic Way. I'll be waiting. I am all that was, that is, and is yet to come. That's an inscription from a temple to Isis in Egypt. You do get around. Not really. I read it off the plaque on your desk when I drew your portrait. Oh, my, Corner chortled as he walked over to give Moore a dig in his ribs. We do have a Wily'Em for the professor. He moved to climb the stairs to his glass haven. As they reached the roof, Moore tossed Corner the phone. Chill air jumped his bones, sending a shiver up his spine as he took the leather purse from his coat pocket. Corner took the bag with a smirk. You're pathetic. His expression went flat. We know each other too goddamn well. I saw the signs at the bar. You get flushed when you're guilty or want something really bad. The purse belongs to Kiowa Larson. She's the mayor's side dish who's gone missing. What'd you do, drop her off the bridge? You got an unhealthy thing for the bridge. Accuse me of murdering a woman? I hope you filled those britches with sand before you got here. Corner lifted a finger toward Moore, the Huey bracelet sliding down his wrist. Moore felt another shiver corkscrew his torso into his hips. Corner's hands were substantial from his years of pounding sandbags after Vietnam. Moore never reached past 5'9", and from that height, Corner 6 feet plus could pass for a towering menace. He concentrated on deep breathing to keep from shivering. Sorry if I offended your integrity, except I know the number of kills you've collected. From you. Corner had confessed his sins to Moore soon after his return from Vietnam, a weepy, alcoholic evening of self-recrimination. The confessions came with colored photographs of various bullet-torn bodies, including women and children. He remembered not being able to speak for several days, overwhelmed by sheer sadness. His country, his government, her mother, Liberty's hosts slaughtering the helpless, burning babies, murdering women and children. Even now he remains stupefied, wondering what could possibly justify such brutality. Murder in the name of the flag on the sleeve. Good old us, the U.S. here all pitching in or burning right in the street, tossing pebbles at a towering iron wall. Was he really any different from Corner, or just lucky? Fucking darkness, Moore. Why didn't you have the sense to stay north? Corner turned to the minibar built into the cupola, spitting in the stainless steel sink. You're dumber than a Dust Bowl Okie. He leaned on the polished wood sideboard as he turned the hot tap to full. Clouds of steam billowed behind him as he picked up an ivory-handled skinning knife. Light from the bar and the steam from the sink cast a nimbus around his head. His eyes glowed like white-hot coals in the shadow. That shiver, that shake that rattles your bones to the very core of you, that's death knocking on the door, son. Corner pointed with the blade of the knife. He pulled out a small cutting board and began slicing limes. I thought I'd seen it all. I was on my third tour. The first two flying the old dog, the Cessna I sent you pictures of, you know. After I got shot down and seeing corpses, burned, some still alive and screaming, from my hand tossing those damn SDRs, those smoke rockets, on some poor mama-sans cutting sugar cane. I didn't deliberately target them, but the napalm that followed my marker sure as hellfire did. I watched after they shot me out of my dog. I watched as a field doctor amputated both arms of one of those mama-sans as she was burned so bad. I cried, dog. I cried hard and I bled tears. I needed redemption. I wanted to find the real war. Go up against the NVA, the real North Vietnamese army. Get a real taste of our mission in Vietnam. A conventional war against regular communist enemy. Not just shaking the place down, killing the women and the men, and fucking the women. Corner paused with the knife, pulling out a liter bottle of Cuervo. He popped the seal and poured tequila in 2 water glasses, handing one to Moore while avoiding eye contact. He slumped into a wicker chair, the Huey bracelet clicking the throat of the tequila bottle as it dangled from his wrist. I pulled strings, but got sidetracked in some supply business in one of the bloodiest provinces in the whole guerrilla theater. Guerrilla, baby. That means anyone. Anyone is your enemy. On the ground, the whole name of the game is search and destroy. We were 4 or 5 platoons, and we weren't bearing gifts and goodwill. I said 4 or 5 platoons because one of the units got cut up pretty bad before I got there. They got jacked in an empty village full of booby traps set by Koreans. American ordnance, claymores, and clusterfucks. One guy lost his dick, just his dick. They were running around trying to pick up pieces of their brothers while more were going off. They were wiping brains out of their shorts. Corner slouched in the chair, giving Moore a sideways glance with raised eyebrows. He leaned his head back, free as any man in a starry glass cage. I didn't know when I went in the Army that I'd be witnessing the descent of man. I just wanted some good, clean mano-a-mano fighting. I think it was the acid. I got it in my head that I needed to walk through the gates of hell to find paradise. I'd been over there nearly 3 years and still hadn't done what I needed to do. Hadn't seen the face I needed to see. We choppered in from the fire base to a series of hamlets, hardly more than sticks and cook fires along a lazy stream the color of green manure. The area was a notorious stronghold for Victor Charlie, the Viet Cong. I'd met Charlie when I was shot down a year or so earlier. I was looking forward to going up against them. They were honorable men. I knew they'd be good fighters. Page 122. Our boys, well, you know. Corner paused to refill his glass and suck on a lime. They were a mixed bag, conscripts without the slightest clue about geopolitics, communism, or who the real enemy was. They'd seen comrades in arms blown to pieces by U.S. goods set by U.S. allies. You might say they were looking for a face to kill. There was one guy, Olson from Portland. He had a college degree, but more than that I could see in his eyes some moral resolution. Some of the others were no more than thugs, looking for an excuse to release their personal dogs of war. I am all that was, that is, and is yet to come. What's that? He asked dully. Corner poured another draught of the Cuervo. His voice had become guttural until it was indistinguishable from the street noise mixed with wind from the Pacific Ocean that rattled the glass panes against iron framework. ISIS. She said that over 3,000 years ago. Story goes she made with Osiris the logos, or word. He lost his rod, too. His brother Set cut him up into 36 pieces. Isis found all the pieces except that one, his Johnson. Still, Isis managed to immaculately conceive a son. Thanks for the tour of Egyptian mythology. You're tripping like you swallowed a hit of Osley's finest, only Osley ain't around anymore. Corner dragged himself to his feet and slipped out the Altoids tin, fumbling for a crystal rock. I need a camera, Moore said, reaching over to grab the tequila bottle. Want to take shots of the professor? She looked good strapped down and slung up in leather and chains. Corner chided as he played the rock of the cocaine below his lower lip with the tip of his tongue. His eyes glazed as the coke short-lined into his brain and the neuron highway. Moore tossed the bottle at Corner. He caught it in flight, laughed, and poured another glass. I give you the camera, you give me a straight answer. What are you going to photograph? Fair enough. The Illuminatus vision I was never able to put on canvas is calling to me, and I want to be ready. What speed film do you have? Film? Man, you do still live in the dark ages. I got one that can catch a jet on the dark side of the moon. You're losing your hold on the here and now, Darkhead. I hope Christina can help. Here's the deal. I'll give you a cell phone to go with the camera. Call me when the visions get too bright. So what happened? Happened? At the Hamlet. Judgment Day, brother. Judgment Day, like no other. Did you get the disc? McCracken's words came over the speakerphone. Got the bag, but no disc. Not to worry, I got more monitored with a GPS cell. I'm giving him some leash, Corner replied as he waxed the tips of his mustache. What? He just happens by and grabs it? He's following you, maybe. Could be Warren's boy Rakitin tipped him off. Corner hung up. He was not blind to his friend's connection to Warren. He didn't understand it. The fool could paint a portrait. Big deal. Put that between 238s and see how well the picture protects you. Corner went back to cleaning his coat, rubbing the blue steel with an oil-soaked rag. Salt air mixed with machine oil, tasting like iodine on a hot knife. Moore headed south on Highway 1 to 19th Avenue with its corner bars and residential townhouses stacked like stucco encyclopedias. San Francisco State University anchored the terminus of Avenue and Freeway as 19th Ave fed into 280 freeway at 75 miles per hour. His heart raced with his wheels, the road drawing him moment by moment closer to Christina. His mouth felt dry as he drove up her curving driveway, bordered with flowering jasmine, following the sweet fragrances to her glass, and beamed home perched above Blackwater, crashing the 200-foot cliff face. Moore stepped from his truck, parked beneath laminated beams, thick as tree trunks, catching stout rafters anchored with galvanized iron brackets. He watched her through glass walls till she descended the stairs, wearing a black woolen turtleneck sweater pulled down mid-thigh over cotton tights. She bounced the last few steps in a pair of Dansko sandals, heels popping on the concrete landing. Her eyes shone from the diffused lighting through a ring of curls. Her lips trembled slightly in the evening chill. He resisted the urge to lean in and touch them with his. The lady could throw a good punch. "Nice pile of sticks y'all got here," he offered with a grin. "A Japanese gardener built this in the 1950s. He landscaped the entire lot with bonsai trees and arched bridges. I'm afraid I haven't been able to maintain his standard," she said, swinging the door open with a smile, absent of any malice from their previous encounter. "Looks immaculate to me. No dead branches or empty McDonald's bags," Moore replied as he climbed the stairs, his hand brushing hers. Entering the vestibule, he doffed his dusty boots before stepping onto polished hardwood floor leading into the living room. Furnished sparingly, the room gave straight away to a view unobstructed. Flat ocean horizon filled his sight from periphery to periphery. A large hand-knot carpet, shot with purple, green, and vermilion, lay slightly off-center. Walking across it, the colored threads popped with static electricity. He backed into a low mahogany coffee table, catching a gray ceramic vase at the neck as a spray of carnations and daisies popped out. When he stuffed them back in, one drooped limp on its stem. "You can feel Starship Earth move with a perspective like this," he replied, staring at walls of glass painted with ocean horizon, banding spilt Milky Way. "Let me get you something to drink. Corona with lime?" she asked, moving to a kitchen adjoining the living room. He handed her the purple drooping daisy. "What's this?" she asked, brushing a curl back. "Not a thing. I picked it off your table," he offered with a slight bow. "Call it a peace offering." They moved to the kitchen. He focused on her hands as she opened the bottle. The tequila he drank at the bar and corners had destabilized his nerves. He saw the mean shadow of him hovering over her. "Mind if I check out your deck?" he asked. "Not at all. I will join you." She handed Moore the beer and slid open the glass door. Sound of surf, crashing rocks 200 feet below filled the space between them. He resisted the urge to sweep her in his arms straight away. She sensed his hunger and moved to the deck railing. The belt of Orion and the red Betelgeuse dominated the stars. "Yad El Yanza, the hand of the central one," she said softly. "We are nothing, or one thing, Yad El." "You really live on the edge of this world," he said, licking her beer traces from his upper lip. "You mean this house? This house, you. You're awake from the dream most of us still tremble in. Once you see the ocean, the world is never quite the same," she said, turning to him, the words having barely left her mouth. Christina ran her fingers down his face, the braille reading of a man lost, he wondered. Pulling her to his chest, his eyes went off her shoulder out to the light years streaming in from beyond the Milky Way. She gently ran her fingers alongside his brow. The eye looks rough. I'm not very good at one-to-one relationships, she warned as she leaned his head closer in. He smelled the soap and talc on her skin. It's possible we met for another reason, other than sex, he replied, touching her lips with his. Is it possible for a man to have anything else on his mind? Christina gave him her lips, and he took them. His hunger threatened to overwhelm him. She pushed him away to keep talking. He knew the chance of him taking her to bed lessened as conversation stood in for lovey-making. I figure you as innocent in the whole scheme that appears to be unfolding. Excuse me, ma'am? There you go. Feigned innocence, but real enough compared to your friend, Corner. His retaining me to translate the copper scroll set off all my alarms, even though I'm pretty sure he is ignorant of its true purpose or value, and I want him to find the papyri. There's something going on with Corner's employer. You should know we are somewhat at odds, she said. I just fell into stupid. Who hired Corner to hire you? You really don't know who is pulling the strings? She asked with a puzzled expression. Johnstone Warren, industrialist and whatever else he likes to hide behind. I should tell you he was an associate of my deceased father. Your friend is his errand boy who brings me you and that painting. I wonder what that evil man wants, she said, wrapping her arms around her chest. I know of him. The man who stole the bomb from Uncle Albert. I tell you what he wants, a painting of a face like the Mona Lisa, except he wants the Magdalena. He wants you for the model and me the artist. Christina stood motionless, her attention on Yad El-Hanza. Moore put his hands on her arms and held her. Tight auburn curls dove around her like a natural extension of the firmament of stars and nebula framing them. He saw her now as cosmic androgen, an embodiment of realization, the sacred packet of liberated quantum energy, electric fluid and velvety flux, the jewel in the lotus, the pearl in black velvet. He felt himself merged in her body, extending into the ocean, moon, and stars. His carnal desire evaporated in the coil of his snake unwinding from his pelvis. Wheels of light transformed his spine from bone to breath. Libido soaring to the third eye. Yad, she said, letting her eyes drift back to the heavens. The one. You see? It's the first letter of the tetragrammaton. Y iota. Yad instead of God. Ultimately the same awareness, free of causality, rather a mere potential. Yad Hey, I am all there is, was, and will be. He threw his head back with laughter as Christina joined him in his arms. He crushed her until he felt her ribs against his, and she let out a groan. Sorry, it's been a long time. Gusts tore off the water, tangling her hair. She pulled from him, gathering a fistful against the wind. Let's keep things simple until we sort this out, she said, offering her hand. Somehow I do not see Warren as an art patron. Actually, he bought one of the Vision paintings. Moore drained the beer and crunched the lime. Christina praised him as she took his empty. Let me get you another. Did you really burn your house down? 2 nights ago when I tried to paint from the sketch. He kneaded his cheek. I broke 5 years of sobriety and crawled into a bottle of Cuervo, got shit-faced with paint on my hands. Did you get any on the canvas? Stardust fell into my veins. I went a little mad. Next thing I know, I'm watching flames consume my cabin. But not your sketch, he said in a raised voice as she went in for another beer. She handed him another Corona glistening with ice sweat topped with wedge of lime. As he took the beer, he noticed one crooked tooth in her lower jaw. Mighty Aphrodite had fallen again. I remember Warren's name. He bought one of my vision paintings through Corner. He told me Warren hung it over his desk. I've never met the man. Corner told me the story how Warren conceived the atom bomb from a series of Sunday lunches he had with Albert Einstein. He let his voice trail off into surf-pounding rocks below. Somebody left a note in my truck about a purse on the Golden Gate Bridge. Then, lo and behold, what do I find right where it was described? He said with a wave of his hands. I'm ready to hear about what I've been dragged into. Strange has been dogging me since Corner came back on the scene. If you want old money, old brotherhoods invested in petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, genetic engineering, and global banking, Warren is your man. I trust none of them, even with Rothschild in my blood. Warren in his younger days was a student of Haskalah. He wanted to be a rabbi. He wasn't Jewish, but this should be a problem? Warren went from wanting to be a rabbi to being the father of modern venture capitalists. The Warren family has embezzled kings and countries back to the American colonies, invested in both sides of the U.S. Civil War. But if you were to hear him say it, his rise corresponds with the fusion of a deeper understanding of ancient mysteries with the ever-widening Freemasonry tradition. He'll tell you it's what World War II was really about. I wonder what's in your heart. The visions, suicides, and bones clattering in the closet? I'm descended from Vikings, drunk Irishmen, and mercenaries born as fodder for war, he replied, taking a long pull on the beer. I should have been in that meat grinder in Vietnam, but Corner saved me by giving me this, he said, pulling down his shirt to show her the scar. He shot you? You say that as a statement of fact. He still denies, and I won't get into what all that denial entails. He resisted, taking her in his arms. Maybe you're both infected with that death wish so common in men. That's why the Kabbalah perpetuated as a deck of playing cards. Someone knew men would turn to gambling as an alternative to war, like gladiators in the National Football League. For Warren, the world became a big crap game. Other than rape, burn, and pillage, we men aren't much good. Tell me, darling, what is Warren's power trip really about? He asked, leaning back on the railing to look at the stars. Welcome to a world beyond the world as we know it. Warren is Corner's source for the Copper Scroll, and he encouraged Corner to have me do the translation. Only he knows the purpose. I've tracked down what I could about Warren's current project, but my sources tell me the old hellhound is keeping his cards close. Moore gazed out to the snowy track of the Milky Way, cleaving the vault of sky like a starry river coursing through black firmament. Cassiopeia zigzagged past her daughter Andromeda to Deneb, the crown of the Northern Cross. Constellations blazed out from a field of nebula storms, swirling with cosmic dust bombarded with X-rays from black holes. I wonder, do we really look at where we live? He asked, rolling his neck to pop a few kinks. Who said we live in the infinity of the gods? Where did the gods go? Overhead, Jupiter shined as bright as a mini full moon. Once we see planets and stars as gods and goddesses, we wake from the slumber of thinking too much of it as only dust and gas in an empty vacuum. It lives. It breathes me or you. He moved his arm across her back, drawing her close. He felt the muscles ridging off her spine, the beating of her heart, the expanding and contracting of her breath. He smelled the rosemary in her hair mixed with iodine from sea salt evaporating in the wind. She drew him out of the spell of orbits, creating the mirage of solid matter, a matter of time, space, mere appearance in a being seen out now a while, that flashed inward memory in his mind. Language is the trail I follow into the cave of deep time. Time measured in millennia, she said. What I discovered when I came up against the stone wall where language becomes purely oral is that, as mankind developed alphabets, we lost touch with our inner divinity. Y'all that divine, now mere inward idea as thoughts of a being mirrored in theory of man as mind or why memory. That spell of inward alphabeta creates a mirror duplicate of that indivisible invisibility bilaterally, y'all, appearing any form as sound waves of Ivre means. A thin slice of a being invisibility now out knowing a while in a primary indivisible wave spectrum. Her way of Ivre as X spectrum formas appearing out existing in formation now a while. Now a while is an uncanny, cunning deception. These thoughts have been playing in my head. Thinking too much, he replied with a frown. In her eyes of Ivre, body is evil. In her eyes, a will be seen any scene of it. Evilness to be any wave, will, or intention. She touched his lips with a static charge that captivated his neuronic mind. He felt the waves of her eyes rippling his autonomic nervous system, playing into his spine and the chakras, the wheels, he mused, kissing her back, in her eyes as ways, in her eyes seen a while. He gave himself to it taking him like a flea on a dog's back, he thought with a chuckle. She now answered with their lips touching. Page 128. McCracken bit his lower lip till he tasted blood. To the side of his desk, a stone carving of a winged man spoke a silent language. The statue, smuggled out of Iraq after the last invasion, was procured just to piss off Warren. Gazing at the ancient relics set off by the glass and chrome of his modern office, he reflected on the old geezer, the man who burned Grandfather Albert, compared to his own siring the 21st century Genome Project child. R.J. remembered from abandonment and poverty his mother and father unnamed and unknown. Adoptive parents lived above a tailor shop where the elevated trains of Chicago's north side shook chunks of plaster from the walls. Street toughs robbed the pocket money he earned working in his father's tailor shop until he grew into size 13 shoes and learned to fight back. Learned the street. Learned to knock a big man on his ass. McCracken left home. He washed dishes, pushed gravel hoppers across miles of flat industrial roofs, and hauled lumber on construction sites. He saved and starved through college, majoring in mixing chemicals, computers, and light bondage as a fetish introduced to him by an offbeat girlfriend. He came of age with the dawn of integrated microcircuits, riding the information highway to riches, holding patents on compression software, and leading him to the edge in proteomics and nanotechnology. His was the largest consortium of computer technology on the West Coast, which he called Portal. His dream, robionics. He wanted to create self-replicating living man machines from nano-engineered protein building blocks. The winged stone man symbolized his pursuit. There were glitches in the process. The human genome only contained 40,000 genes, whereas a typical cell made hundreds of thousands of distinct proteins. His people were on the verge of a breakthrough when the mystery darkness came, reabsorbing protein holograms like a transiting black hole. Research faltered, then sputtered to a halt. McCracken's only competitor was Warren with his Messing Labs consortium. Now the key to Warren's latest breakthrough research floating just beyond his grasp on Kiowa Larson's disk. Just as that golden ring appeared within reach, some half-wit, half-baked artist snags it. That old man, waiting for his life to end, could never understand the subtleties of 21st century intelligence. But he's got more lab. McCracken thought he might live to regret hiring Corner, paying him enough to compromise his loyalty to Warren, but never knowing exactly what side of the fence he might jump. The price of doing business with a fiend like Corner. Sure, he introduced him to Zena's, letting Corner believe he was depraved, part of a subterfuge he had worked out with Larson. He wanted Corner to believe, to keep him guessing. Leave it to a blonde with fake tits to try and play him against that killer. He recalled those nights at Zena's with her snorting cocaine and drinking whiskey straight up. She had played a mean stick at pool and sex. She was fun, if slightly damaged. Corner really was psycho, he reflected, wrapping a fertility stick on his palm. McCracken seethed to see that disc and get a leg up on Messing. He looked out the heavy glass windows that fronted the atrium courtyard of Portal's Menlo Park inner sanctum. His corporate logo implied access. He envisioned his destiny to control the secrets encoded in the genetic matrix of life, to build a better mankind, or kind of man, a synthetic kind of man, self-replicating armies of that kind of man. Kiowa's disk held information he needed, but she gave him a companionship he longed for. Now Corner had silenced her. Lifeless eyes stared back off the glass through the murky veils of his daydream. Passing lights pierced the water droplets splattering his windshield as Moore headed downtown. His thoughts turned to always getting found, drifting up and down these 7 hills, once 40, counting sand dunes on the peninsula. He got found in that city of wasted saint, an urban body of gods and devils, fire, 2 sides of one forged gold coin. The original barren, windswept peninsular tip had remained uninhabited in those pre-Columbian centuries. The first invaders, Spanish missionary priests, chose for their mission site a more sheltered location along a stream a mile inland from ocean-tinged bay. He'd read the original mission had been reduced to a saloon and stable by the time of the gold rush. He knew the action of the gold rush in 1849 centered on a harbor of wharves just around the east side, sheltered from the Golden Gate where gold-fevered crews abandoned hundreds of ships. He imagined lathered teams of mules huffing some wooden hulk on shore for a saloon, a hotel, hell, even an insane asylum for those losing their minds in the rush. An instant city arose from those wooden hulls, their sailcloth now tents for saloons and gambling parlors. For more, the rush was still on, minds still being blown. Long-haired hippies and sweet butts and patched Levis had replaced the roughneck miners and bustled madams. Gold now and hallucinogens, opiates, and tetracannabinols. In this wind-swept and fog-shrouded land, he, along with countless other refugees, sought the soul of a country that failed any real complete definition. Failed in a bloody quagmire 10,000 miles west across the Pacific. Failed in assassination or incorporation. Failed in other wars on race, poverty, or drugs. This second rush was on to find free love in a fairy landscape that had turned sand dunes to picnic parks, rhododendron groves, stately redwoods, artificial lakes, or a neoclassic glass conservatory, all flowing into a blue-collar neighborhood teeming on a commercial street called Hate. Looking for love in the hate. Moore knew it well. knew it as Golden Gate to other dimensions. Luminous dimensions as real as the myriad rows of Victorian gingerbread along stucco flaw mission-style houses and five-story apartments rolling up then down the neighborhood called Haight-Ashbury. He knew her mad chemist separating out pure white crystals of lysergic acid on the upside, or dipping innocuous mushrooms in animal tranquilizers on the downer side. It was a place to meet God and the devil, mixing it up in one crazy dance of elite spiritual beings and criminal degenerates, about blissful liberation or enslavement to addiction and self-annihilation. Page 130. Such was the irony, he mused, of looking for love in the hate. When the flowers faded and the drugs hardened, that street would live up to its name. After the affluent flower children returned to college from a summer of love, the rush still on. A poorer, trashier legion drifted in from thousands of miles northeast and south. Coincidentally, the degradation of the neighborhood, dropping real estate values like a hippie coming down from a dose of windowpane acid, afforded the mayor's daughter the opportunity to make the proverbial real estate killing. Then there was a real killing in the Haight. More remembered bodies turning up in basement graves, destitute drifters lost in her maw, drugged hippie girls raped in the spreading shadows, the psychedelic shop burned to the ground, police substation bombed, the rush still on speed and downers. He recalled the day a blue wave showed up, in force, along with innovative shadowless street lighting casting out many of the demons. Religion poured in from taps around the world. Moore figured all the acid had burned a hole into such a litany of gurus and would-bes were drawn, along with the lambs. Boomer parents feared them more than the acid, which had at least the patina of good old American entrepreneur about it. The next religious wave smacked of foreign gods, of heresy, of mind control, diverging from that of the great American religious institutions conventionally accepted. More flashed on 500 hippies, the good kind, educated liberal hearts filled with back to the land hope, Mother Earth in their shoes, headed out in old school buses for a farm in Tennessee. Or 1,500 poor ghetto black and white taking the Kool-Aid in the jungle of Guyana. He'd been up, then down these hills of ecstasy or despair enough times to know better, or not. He neared Market and Powell's fog-smeared amber streetlights, turned north on Jones and east on Post, entering the St. Francis Hotel through the Geary Street parking garage. A valet in red vest greeted him with a smile, nonchalant about parking the dusty pickup with Jags, Beamers, and Benzes. Find a good spot for her, Jackson. She's all I got left after my pad burned down last night, Moore gave as he stepped out. You gots it, brother. I'll see she gets tucked in, the attendant replied with a grin. Gonna be a chilly evening with that fog, Moore returned before catching up with his self-sworn vow not to talk inanely about the weather. Quisanda was right about the night too cold to sleep in his truck. Just thoughts of trying to sleep, shivering in the chill, put his nerves on edge. Tonight he chose the St. Francis for its name and proximity to the site of his vision of the pyramid and the flaming eyes. There was an answer, a reassurance he hoped to find, craved for. Checking in at the desk, he went straight to the bar. He had no luggage, only the fresh clothes on his back after he'd showered at Christina's. The tinkle of jazz piano caught his attention, and he took the 3 steps up to the Compass Rose Lounge. The pianist shook out her fine, waist-length black hair as her head bobbed up from the keys, just as he looked over. He had seen too many movies of hotel lobbies with shady characters and femme fatales. The St. Francis had that century-old dark wood paneled ambience with low-lit raised lounge offset from the open lobby. This may only be a movie, his role unfolding as a story projected on the blank screen. Then, who was the director, and would he get the girl? Moore looked around candlelit tables in the oak-paneled lounge. Through tall arched windows fronting the street, he saw a bus parked at the stop where the pyramid had once appeared, mirage flames dancing above its truncated base. Holy Knossos, revealed amongst the clamor of city streets, more real to him than concrete and steel. Notes from the Yamaha grand piano played over him like the creek rushing over the rocks below his cabin. A few guests seated around the circular bar occupied the room. Moore turned his attention to the woman at the keyboard. She picked up a chord as others scattered beneath her fingers. He drifted over to a small table by the window. Outside, blue flashing lights zigzagged from the roof bar of a tow truck hooking up a disabled muni bus. "Would you mind taking our picture?" He looked from the street to a couple standing over his table. "Excuse me?" The pianist joined the couple. "Hello there, can you take a photo of us?" "Let me at the camera. I'm Darkmoor," he offered. "Sue Lee. Thanks for doing this," she replied and handed him a small digital camera. Sue Lee and the couple pulled in around the piano, chandeliers in the background. Moore popped a couple of frames. Her porcelain skin, faintly rouged at the cheeks, flared in a flash against the dark of the candlelit lounge. They took the camera and left the bar. "Friends?" "Actually just met. They like my music." "I've never heard anything quite like it. Kind of an Asian cool jazz." Sue Lee went back to her playing, shaking back her silky tresses, ends falling across her back. Flesh tones of thigh stretched out from a sequin burgundy miniskirt as her black spike heel rocked on brass pedals. "How often do you play?" he asked. "I'm only here on a trial basis. My sound hasn't brought in the crowds." "Saw a man here once do Frank Sinatra in a tux. Smooth backup band with a stand-up acoustic bass, martinis and long-stem glasses. Nostalgia for the good bad old days filled the tables." She answered Moore with a silent smile. Page 132. Warren drifted off into contemplation, his wasted body slumped in the wheelchair. He dreamt of bombs, hundreds of thousands of bombs stacked, pointing out, pointing down, running to the horizon, more bombs pointing upwards, marched endlessly left and right. On the far periphery, he saw explosions, showers of blood rain, thick with mangled body parts. He turned back to a boardroom, associates seated alongside one another running the length of both sides of the table. They were a mixed breed of faceless creatures wearing various smiling masks. A red river flowing with slag and offal ran beneath them. Then he smelled Rakitan's soap. "Is that you, Steppen?" "Yes, sir. You were sleeping?" "I have been observing. War, you know, is no longer a winnable game, whereas endless war against faceless terror is very profitable. Complete doom is, well, bad for business. It is time. Time to recognize we are ready for space, even if it means enslaving and killing millions. Ultimately, we all turn into a liberation, liberating everyone. I'm not talking of spaceships and colonies, not that. I am seeing the big picture, recognizing the spatial nature of us as a being, the singular, indivisible blackness body, just us, of a being cosmic. Are we all not invisibility in the vastness of Ma's nature? Invisibility, yet still aware of any appearing of a being seen of that? What is all this business of busyness? Plunder and pussy, he cackled. All that is holding us back is archaic, crumbling attachments. Tiny, grubby fingers blindly grasping for a desperate and fleeting fragment. Warren hesitated as he grasped for his breathing to get back in rhythm with the pumps supporting his life systems. Now the true Christ prophecy will come to pass, with a sword to smite and sever those ignorant unwashed that would hold us back with every wasted breath in their meaningless lives. I must lead. I must advance us at all costs. This end, this final journey will be my legacy. Do you think those demons at Messing have any vision of liberation? Only I, Stepan. Only I have the power to execute this grand awakening. The dying white race has become coddled and lost the will to perpetuate this myth. Soon, Stepan, no more vanilla ice cream, only mocha, lemon, and chocolate. Moore threw back the shot of tequila as Sule finished her last set. They had talked briefly during their previous break. As the Buddha said, imagine everyone as once being your mother. Better to gain detachment than make a fool out of yourself. But what the hell? It wouldn't be the first time and probably not the last. Feeling no more pain from the last bruise, he still felt irrevocably drawn to that pudendum spread across the sky. Christina had ultimately refused his advances, but the last parting was amicable. He would see her again. Just now he felt an arousal dormant over the past few years. You have a card? Sule asked as she sat across from him. Outside, the decommissioned bus had been towed away. Others came and went. Join me for a drink. I have to meet my fiancé, she said. Why ask for a card? Sex is not all a woman wants. She can be interested in getting to know someone. My apologies. I felt a certain tension between us I usually associate with mutual desire. Must be the booze. Are you an alcoholic as well as a sex fiend? Are you a ball buster as well as a musician? When I'm playing, the music gives me flashes inside people. I enjoy men with minds. What a concept. My fiancé is a neurosurgeon. What's that got to do with me? I'm a burned-out painter. I watch my people and ask myself, what do they think? Do they ever wonder who they really are, what they're really about? Do they ever question or merely stumble forward with the herd? I look for a man who can think, and you're there. You have the look of someone thinking about more than football and vaginas. Pure coincidence. I'm still stuck on the riddle that I am. Now you're going into the real question. That turns me on. Moore studied her face. So much blood rushed to his brain that it seemed to swell. Ultraviolet hues pulsed in the shadows. Listen to my music. Answers are everywhere, she said, slipping a CD into his hand. Sule touched his head. Static electricity arced between palm and forehead as her fingertips pressed on the top of his skull. She walked the carpeted stairs to the lobby and out through the revolving doors. He looked at the cover of the CD. Sule smiled over her bare shoulder as she sat on a sequined red miniskirt on the edge of a white baby grand. Enough of musical women, he cursed. He slipped the CD in his pocket. He took the glass elevator that passed the rooftop of the original hotel to another 30 stories above. Opening the door, he found his room had the usual bed, bath, minibar, and side table with a telephone. He turned on the light in the bathroom, took off his shirt, and touched the scar on his chest. A year had passed before he'd fully recovered from the shock of being shot. Circumstances that evening being somewhat murky, coroner was never charged. For Moore, it was just something in the cards being dealt. Drawing saved his life in a way, for in his recovery, he rediscovered within a silent friend who helped heal the boy and taught the man to see. For more, drawing was his jnanam, his means for finding himself whole, if not completely sane. He saw a silver plate with gold foil mints on a table. He peeled the foil off one, letting the chocolate melt on his tongue.